Hi, here I am. Okay, I think I got everything to work, so I'm here. All right, so I am here to talk about Dress to Confess, the third costume shop mystery, and it is right back here next to Bear Vallere and Muerto, his little friend. You know, whatever, you do what you have to do. So Dress to Confess is the third costume shop mystery, and most people know, because I don't mind talking about my teddy bear's influence on my writing. I'm gonna take these off for a second, although I'm gonna need to put them on if I have to figure out any of these buttons. But oops, something on my screen. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so the costume shop mysteries were largely inspired by him. I was having lunch with my agent and editor. We were talking about different mystery series that could turn into fun, cozy themes, and it was September. We were talking about what we were going to wear for Halloween, and I started telling a story about making his Halloween costume. I do this every year. I make him a little Halloween costume. You may have seen them on Facebook. And that year he was going to be a little Yeti. Okay, something just popped up, so I'm going to put my glasses on because I can't read. Okay, swipe. I don't know. Okay, so I told him the story about making his Yeti costume. It was kind of hilarious, just sticking him in this little white fur outfit, and his little arms were sticking out, and I had these little vampire teeth sewn on. Anyway, so the story was, which I was cracking up as I was telling the story. Hopefully I was entertaining them as well. But that was where the idea came from, because my agent then said, that is your series idea, a costume shop mystery series. So I thought that sounded great. It sounded fresh and unique and something different. It wasn't something I had written before. The thing was, I already had 3 series at that point, and I wasn't really looking for a 4th, so I thought I would go back to the first story I had ever published, which was a short story in a Sisters in Crime anthology. It was the Guppy anthology called Fish Tales. And I had always thought I wanted to revisit that character and turn her into a possible series. So what I ended up doing was using her and kind of loosely moving her. I don't know that I ever said the story was set in California, but in my head it was. But in the book, I moved it to Nevada, and I wrote it, and I turned everything in, and there were a couple of things about the character that the publisher said, I'm not sure that's right for a cozy. She was in therapy. I thought the whole therapy thing was really funny, but they said that wasn't really right for their line. So I said, you know what? Instead of taking that out completely, because I thought it worked really well for that character, I said, let me change the character's name. I'll make her somebody entirely new, and then I'll know I can always still go back to my other character, and you can have this character. So that was kind of how Margot Tamblyn arrived on the scene. She was originally Mia Thomas in the short story, so kind of close, but still. Both versions based on Marlo Thomas from That Girl, because I love that girl, and I just thought it would be really fun to have Margot be somebody who dresses like that, and her mom, having died, had a whole 1964-ish wardrobe that Margot inherited, so that all kind of played in, and she has her little flip. So that was the physical template for Margot. So that was where the idea came from for that series. So one of the questions that I got for this, these aren't in order, but I know that I got a question about that, which was, how did you come up with your different ideas? So that one, Alicia, thank you for asking that. And that was where that idea came from. Now, when you do a proposal for a publisher, they like to see the synopsis for the first book that you're proposing, but they also like to see quick little sketches of what other books in this series might be. So I feel like I have kind of like a weird little shadow on my face there. It's kind of like, it's like in Batman Returns when, Selena Kyle, the light hits her and all of a sudden she's got those weird shadows and she's kind of like Catwoman before she's Catwoman. Anyway, that was a little tangent there. It's one of my favorite movies. It's my favorite holiday movie. There's a fun fact. So, yes, so different ideas. So when I came up with the costume shop mysteries, I didn't know which one I was going to do first, but I just wanted to come up with a couple of ideas. What they want to know is they want to make sure that whatever your series idea is, there's enough there that you can actually do more than one book. And that makes sense. So I had one that was the birthday party, which where there's 40 detective themed birthday party costumes, which ended up being A Disguise to Die For, book 1. I had one which would be, let's see, one was Sci-Fi Showdown, one was Teddy Bear Tragedy, one was, there was the festival one. So I came up with about 5 little quick sketches. So when it came time to write, after they showed interest in the series, I thought, well, let's see, what am I going to do? I wrote the detective one first because I just thought that was such a fun thing, and it's cozy mystery, and I just thought it would be like a fun for the mystery community to have all those different detectives at a party together. I had my publication dates at that point, and I knew that the second book was supposed to come out in October, so I thought, well, that's a Halloween book, no brainer. So then the third book that came around, I looked at what I had left, and I thought, I think it would be kind of fun to do the Sagebrush Festival one. And so that was where that idea originally came from. So I do have a couple other ideas, custom shop ideas in my back pocket for future books, but not sure where it would go. I do think it would be fun to have something at a sci-fi convention. I also think it would be kind of fun to actually have a vintage costumes from like Hollywood, have that kind of thing happening in the small town. So there's lots of stuff I can play with, which is my favorite part of the whole series, because it's a little wacky. I mean, I got some wacky characters in there, and they're kind of fun to revisit from time to time. I never know what Gina Casavoli's going to do. She's, kind of the nemesis of Margot, and poor Kirby, he's got to get a break one of these days. So anyway, so that's where the idea came from for the different books in that series. So I'm going to take another question, which this is a nice segue. When writing different series, do you ever mix up your characters? I don't so much mix up the characters, but sometimes I will write something, and as soon as I have the words down and I read it, I know that character wouldn't have said it. And it usually happens the most with Samantha Kidd. Her voice wants to come out into everything that I write, but as soon as I see a line, I'll know Samantha would say that, but not everybody else. So I have to dial that back. And I don't know, she likes to insert herself in all these other books. I just feel like she's going to pop up in another one of my series somewhere and have a crossover, but I'm not sure exactly where. So I generally don't get the other ones mixed up. I do sometimes see that it could be kind of fun to have different characters walk on stage and off stage. In Dressed to Confess, there actually is a reference to a character named Elliot Lisbon, who is in Kendall Lynn's Elliot Lisbon series. She's not on stage, but Ebony does kind of need to talk to somebody else who knows how to plan parties. So that was a little reference to another series there. That kind of thing ends up being fun for a writer. So I don't know if anybody else has read that series. You might have picked up on that. So I will say, though, when it comes to keeping characters straight, I always try to make sure that the series are different enough from each other so that I don't feel like I'm writing the same book over and over again. And it always kind of goes back to like, what are the elements about each series that make them differ from the others? And I'm not just talking about the setting of the hook, but in some cases I'm talking about the I'm gonna scroll down, make sure I'm not missing any questions. If it's the Fabric Shop series, I really wanted that one to feel a lot like a very family oriented, because I know in Samantha Kidd, her family is on the other side of the country, and in Madison, she doesn't have family anymore. So when I wrote Polyester, I wanted family to be an element there, and I actually named all the characters after my own family members so that when I was writing it, I would have that feeling. In Costume Shop, I really wanted there to be that strong bond between Margot and her dad, and in some ways, I kind of wanted her dad to maybe feel like the kid and her to feel like the adult, which it played off of when she had to come back to Proper City to take care of him after his heart attack. And then after his heart attack, he really realized he wants to get out on the road and score costumes around the country. So that, I think, was a little bit inspired by Veronica Mars. I don't know if we have any Veronica Mars fans watching, but I loved that relationship between Veronica and her dad. And I had just kind of discovered Veronica Mars when I was writing the first Costume Shop book. So I think there was a sense of that as well, that kind of like, what would it be like if you had a mom and a daughter, or a dad and a daughter, but there was no mom character? What would that have been like? And he owns a costume shop, so what would she have been like growing up with a dad who ran a costume shop? And it always was funny to me that he dressed her in the clothes from the shop instead of taking her out shopping for little girl clothes. So she was probably this very odd character running around town. So there was that. Okay, so the next question has to do with Bear, and it is Bear going to have his own series? Well, I don't know that I'm going to write a series about Bear, but I will say he has told me he wants to write a mystery, so you never know. You might get a mystery written by Bear Vallere. I have a feeling it might be a picture book, though, because he has paws, and it's kind of hard for him to hit the keys, so it might make it really difficult for him to actually construct a plot. So, you know, you'll hear more about that in the future, I'm sure, if he ever gets his act together and decides to write it. In the meantime, he's just sort of loosely operating as my author assistant. And some of you know what that means, some of you don't. Okay, so what am I working on now? Well, I'll take a break from talking about Dress to Confess just to say that I am working on a cozy mystery set in outer space. It is a cozy mystery first, but it's ending up having this nice adventure element to it. But I wouldn't call it sci-fi. Specifically, it's maybe like elementary level science, because that's kind of where I rest in the world of science knowledge. But it is a ton of fun, and I think I just really wanted an escape this year, so I went as far away as I could, and I went to outer space. So anyway, I'm working on that. It's tons of fun. Hopefully that will be out sometime in 2018. Other than that, I did just turn in the revisions on Madison Night number 5, the pajama frame, which was also that was fun too. I don't know, I seem to have fun with my books, so I hope everybody has fun reading them, because it is fun to write them. It's really fun to write the draft because there's no criticism, and I always think I'm like genius, and then I go back in afterward and I go, oh my god, there's like, this doesn't make sense, and I never explained that, and I have to loop around. So yeah, the draft is tons of fun, and then after that it's always kind of like, oh dear Lord, how did all these stuff happen? And I have to do a lot of cleanup, and that's what happens when you write by the seat of your pants. So speaking of writing by the seat of my pants, which I'm a pantser. That's what the technical term is, meaning I don't know where I'm going as I'm writing. So there's a funny story for this particular book. I was when I was writing this book, it was right around Boucher Con. I don't even remember which Boucher Con it was. 2015, I think, and I was writing up till before the conference, and then I knew I was going to the conference. I generally don't get to write much when I'm at a conference, and then I was going to come home and resume. So there was a little break of time, like a week in there. And I remember the last thing I wrote before Boucher Con was that Margot had just found a teddy bear in a sewer grate. And the thing was, I had no idea where that was going. Like none. Like I remember writing it, and I wrote it, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's a teddy bear in the sewer grate. And then I walked away. And I went to BoucherCon, and I had to talk about that. I was on a panel, and I was asked the question about, you know, writing styles, and I talked about this teddy bear in a sewer grate and how I had no idea what it meant. And it was, you know, I came back to the file after the conference was over, and I was like, well, what does that mean? Why would there be a teddy bear in a sewer grate? So I had to figure that out. So that was actually, that's the kind of trouble you get into when you write by the seat of your pants, because, you know, especially in a mystery, kind of like the first half, I'm inventing red herrings and coming up with who the suspects are, and Margot doesn't have a clue. I don't always know who the killer is, but she's discovering these things, and I just have to kind of trust that it's all going to come together at the end. So that was one of those things that I didn't know how it was going to play out. I actually like how it ended up playing out, and it really created some nice complications for her, so that was good too, because that's what you really want. You don't want things to be too easy for your sleuth. So that was kind of like part of the process of writing this particular book. So let's see. Next question. Oh, we're doing really good on time, and I'm not getting a lot of questions happening. I don't know. Is this even posting? Last time I feel like I saw myself on the screen while I was talking, and this time I don't see myself talking, so I'm not sure. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe this will all post after the fact, in which case I'm really sorry, people. Technology and me, you know, I do my best, but if I did this more frequently, I'd probably know, or if I were smart, I'd write down a little list of what to do, but yeah, we'll see by the time I do the next one if I actually remember that. Okay, so the next question I have is, how many books ahead do you know what's going to happen? So I think this is referring to, like, since I'm writing series, since I don't know what's happening in the book, is there the bigger story arc? I think that's what the question was. All right, so that's what I'm going to answer here. So how far ahead? Well, like I said, I don't always know what's going to happen in that particular book as I'm writing it. Obviously, it starts to come together a little bit more as I'm writing, but I do generally know where I want the characters to be at the end of the book or in the next book. So as I'm writing this, because they're like, Costume Shop has a sweet element of romance to it. It's not like a flat out like we know what's going to happen kind of thing, but there's, you know, there's been some flirtation, there's been a little bit happening there. So that part I always have to think about, like, where do I want that to be in the next book, because then I know what to do in this book to end up there. Same thing goes kind of with the family, you know, because I know that Margot is now taking over this costume shop, but if her dad's around all the time, then she's not really taking it over. But she was a magician's assistant. She wasn't a business owner, so she has to learn a little bit about how to run a business. So those kinds of things, it's all part of character growth. So I generally like to think one book ahead. So if I'm writing book 3, I have kind of an idea of where I want the characters to be in book 4. Same like book 4, book 5. With Madison book that I just finished, as I was writing book 5, I kind of knew the things I wanted to play with in the next book, so I had to set them up, but I also had to kind of wrap up things, so it wasn't, like, I knew I was going to answer questions in book 6, but I don't know that the reader knows that, and I don't want to necessarily leave people hanging too long. So that's kind of how I get an idea of how far ahead I want to be. For the books with Penguin Random House, because they were 3-book contracts, that became a little tricky because, like, especially with the Material Witness books, I didn't know if there would be more than 3, and I found it very easy to write book 2. It was more difficult to write book 3 because in my head I had to answer certain questions, but I also wanted to leave things open enough that if there was a book 4, I would know where I was going. So I still know what I would write for book 4 in that series. I mean, I still have it in my head, and I still like that, and I have titles for books 4 and 5, and maybe even book 6. And usually once I come up with a title I like, I feel like I have to write the book. But not sure what's going to happen there with an additional fabric shop book. But yeah, that is kind of the challenge. When you don't know how many more there's going to be, it's much easier when you have this never-ending stream of books, and when you can control that, because then if you get an idea, you know you can kind of like place little stepping stones that are going to take you to that idea down the path. So there's that. I think something here said that I had a question, so I'm going to come over here and see if I do have a question. Let's see. I have a couple more lined up here, but I see you on the screen but don't see any comments. You are on live, but only 2 people are watching. Well, there is that. But I did say that I was recording this. Now, I don't know. I knew that other people were going to come, but if you're seeing me on the screen, then I guess I'm on the screen. So I'm just going to keep on going. But I will write, let's see. Oh, what did I just do? I'm going to write, I'm here and I'm live. I'm here and I'm live, not love, live. Join me if you want. There you go. So I told the story about the bear in a sewer grate. That one I'm going to shift over there. I'm going to need more questions from the 2 of you who are watching, because I'm running out over here from the pre-asked questions. Oh, a question about covers. So this is actually kind of a fun one, and I don't have the Halloween book here, but I'll tell the story. So the question is, do I have any input on my covers? And the thing is, I have some. In this series, they ask for my input, but then there is a team, there is an art department, and they do the covers, and they kind of, you know, thematically connect book to book. I assume the same people do the covers for each book in the series, but I'm not sure. But in this series, because I knew the bear was so fundamentally important to the series even existing, and there's bears in costume in the books, I thought it would be really, really funny to have a bear in costume or a bear somewhere on one of the covers. So when it was time to do the cover for book 2, I actually said that because I thought I have book 2 and book 3, so, you know, I said I would really like to see a bear on the cover of one of these books. Now, at the time, I knew that there was a teddy bear costume featured prominently in book 3. And I thought that would actually have made a really great cover to just see a teddy bear costume like hanging from a hook on the back of a door in the costume shop, which did not happen, but I really kind of liked that idea. So I didn't know if they would or wouldn't, and they did put a teddy bear on the cover of book 2. He's barely visible. You have to look pretty closely. The bottom half of him is visible like under the awning on the side of the cover. So they gave me what I asked for, but you know, it was not like a full-on bear, but there are bear themed series, so I'm sure they saved the bears for those series. So let's see. So that is the input on the covers there. The other thing with the Halloween book, actually, when they asked me for input on the cover, before that, I told you that it was an October book. So I wrote the Halloween book, turned it in, and then I found out that they shifted the entire series back 2 months. And I said, well, I'm okay with book 1 shifting back, but the second book was a Halloween book. Does that mean it's not coming out in October? And they said, no, it's going to come out in December. And I said, well, wait a minute, I wrote a Halloween book. Shouldn't it come out around Halloween? They said, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. They actually asked if I wanted to rewrite it to make it a Christmas book, and I said no. That did not sound like fun. So I ended up, okay, somebody else joined us, I think. I ended up just kind of going with it, and that's the way it's going to be. And when they asked for input on the cover, I gave them everything that I thought would be great for the cover, which was all Halloween-y stuff. And they came back to me about 2 weeks later and said, you know what? This book is so clearly a Halloween book. It's a costume shop series. It just all makes sense that it comes out around Halloween. So they did move that back into October, which was kind of nice. I don't know that, I think that was really rare, and I think I'm really, really lucky that they did that, and I'm very thankful if anybody from my publisher sees this. I really appreciate that they did that. This one, Sagebrush Festival, because it takes place in Nevada and it's hot, kind of made sense that it came out in summer, but in Nevada it's hot a lot. So that one didn't matter quite as much. So one of the questions that I do get when I talk about this is about how did I know that I could make a costume shop series last for more than just Halloween. And part of that comes from the fact that I do love costumes. And, you know, if you know me a little bit, you know I like clothes, you know I like to get dressed up at conferences, and I post my wardrobes and things like that. But I feel like all of that kind of comes from this sense of insecurity, this sense of like, if like clothing is an armor and costumes are an armor, and if you dress a certain way, you can, it's like a shield. So when I thought about a girl who grew up in a town, in a costume shop, but she's in a small town, her mom died when she was born, so she's kind of had an unusual, you know, growing up, and she has some insecurities. And I started thinking about then what might that town be like? And when I thought, okay, well, if you have a small town and they're basically a census designed town, you know, people just kind of moved there and created their own town. It's not a town like one that, you know, has been there for 200 years. It just sort of popped up and was based on this prospector, Pete Proper. That's when I started thinking, okay, well, if they are into costumes and that's their thing, then there would be reason to have costumes at different times. And that all made a lot of sense to me. Now, I will say that since then, way since then, like this year, long after I wrote all 3 books, I kind of fell in love with Gilmore Girls, which is silly because you would think I would have seen the show. I mean, it's so me. I'm kind of shocked that I never watched it before, but I watched it this year, and I jumped into the deep end, and I think I've watched it all twice. So the thing is, it's like the perfect cozy town, except there aren't people dying, but you get that sense of like these quirky little people. But you start noticing how many times they do reenactments, there's costumes. They did like the Festival of Living Art, and there were costumes. There are plays that they put on, and there are costumes. So it kind of like dawned on me well after the fact that in these kind of little towns, you actually do have that sort of thing way more than you would think. So that kind of, it's a nice thing that played back into the concept, and it actually, I guess it kind of helped me see that it wasn't crazy to even think that, but you know, I kind of went with it. Oh look, the Peanut Gallery's phone is ringing. I'm going to turn the ringer off. Oh please. Okay, I'm back, but the Peanut Gallery is going to come out here and get his phone. So I I turned the ringer off, but it's okay. Okay, so what else? Do we have any other questions in here? Since we are not going crazy here with questions, I'm going to try to think of anything else that I know I've gotten asked about this series. Well, I know I've talked a little bit about the dancers. I talked about this in my YouTube video. I have a little story behind the story video on YouTube. If you want to follow me on YouTube, you can find out short, like 5-minute videos about some of my books and different series and different things that I'm posting there. But one of the things, when I was first writing this, I wanted the dance troupe, they were originally the Sagebrush Sallies, but I renamed them the Domino Divas. They were based on the Go-Go's. And I was actually going to name all of them after the Go-Go's. And I think when I first sat down and started writing it, I started doing that. And then I realized that probably one of them was going to die, and I didn't want to kill off one of the Go-Go's. And that's when I started looking on their website and just looking for interesting little things that could inspire me. And that's when I discovered there actually was this huge infight in the group. And it kind of bothered me a little bit too, because then I thought, okay, well, I can't really completely use them as a template because there actually is some drama there, and I can't kill off any of them because they have their own thing going on. So I think one of them still has a name from one of the Go-Go's, but the rest of them don't. And Ronnie's name, I think I pulled from Ronnie Spector, because I was in that whole kind of musical world when I was thinking of these characters. But I did think it would be fun to kind of dress them up in go-go boots and they'd be a 60s dance troupe instead of singers. That was made for better costumes, so that's why I ended up using dancers. And that's where they came from. I did not use as much food in this book. I'm not good with food in cozies. I love reading about it, but I'm not great because I'm not a cook. I'm not the cook in the family. Neither is he. The peanut gallery is the cook in the family. So he, otherwise known as Tall Man, named by Bear Vallere. So I do include some recipes in the back of the books. And in this one, I got to make the spicy acorn treats, which I did actually make. And I think I posted a picture on Instagram way back when I tested them, and they were pretty good. I mean, I kept adding like pepper to my melted chocolate to make those little spicy acorns. The problem is when you do that, maybe this is why I don't do it. Okay, the problem is when you do that, you have to eat what you make. And if you make Hershey Kisses that are like chocolate pasted to a Nutter Butter cookie with a little chocolate chip cookie on the end, that's not health food. So I make that, and then I have a plate because I had to make a whole bunch of them to test to make sure I got all my ratios right so I could include the recipe in the book. And then I'm left with a whole plate of these, you know, Nutter Butter chocolate chip, chocolate Hershey Kiss things. Yes, that's probably why I don't include recipes in my books, because the kind of recipes that I would include are like that. And they're like sandwiches and pizza and, you know, I should really include some salads in some of my books. That's what I should do. So I am checking. I don't see any more questions here. And let me just check what's up here, because I see, let's see. Okay. No more questions are posted here. So I am now going to see if I can think of anything else that I have been asked about this book. Well, I did hear that Bear is making an appearance in someone else's mystery, Sybil, but that's all I'll say. He does make an appearance in another book that I wrote that is as yet unpublished, and Tiger is in that one. That's his best friend is Tiger. But see, now you can tell I'm trying to come up with material because I'm talking about Bear and Tiger. They're hijacking this book club. So, what else do I have to say? Okay, well, conspiracy theories. That was another fun part for this book. Conspiracy theories, because Don Digby is one of the suspects in the book. He is a conspiracy theorist, and I thought it would be fun to reference and bury some different conspiracy theories in this book. So I actually did. There's the obvious ones that he makes reference to, like the fact that there are people who think we didn't actually land on the moon, and there are people who think that Elvis is still alive, and all different things like that, and of course everything everybody has ever said about JFK. But there actually is the 32 Enigma. You can look that up on Wikipedia. That's a whole conspiracy theory. And there actually was a conspiracy theory, a crime I think it was in Japan, of a robbery where there was so much evidence that they couldn't solve the case because there was too much evidence. And I thought that's a really intriguing thing for bad people to do. So I kind of used that a little bit in this book too. So going back to the question about where I get my ideas, kind of get them a little bit from everywhere. If I'm stuck, my mind starts to wander, I start to watch YouTube videos, I start to, you know, do all kinds of weird things. Sometimes I watch like makeup tips for women over 40. Sometimes I watch Taylor Swift videos, all different things, but you know, it all sort of funnels in and eventually something shakes something loose and then I just keep writing again. Today I've been working on the Moon book because I'm getting close to the end of it, and that's always an exciting part for me because I start to see, like, I'm picking up steam, and you know, Sylvia Stryker is about to like try to repair the Moon unit, so that's very exciting because I don't know what's going to happen. See, again, I don't know what's going to happen. That's my biggest motivation for getting my words in, is that I don't know what's going to happen. I want to find out, so I have to sit down and write the book because otherwise I'll never know. So anyway, I know that all makes me sound really crazy, doesn't it? Okay, well, there you go. I am, since I don't see any more questions here, and I think I've covered lots and lots about Dress to Confess, I am actually going to call this book club at 3:40 because we did have some technical difficulties at the beginning, but I thank those of you who joined me. I will be posting this later on. It'll go on my YouTube channel, so anybody who wasn't able to watch it, you can still see it there. Thanks a ton. And if you do have any other questions, I can always address them in the group. Thank you. Bye.